Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and welcome to the 2023 Raceland Football Legends Hall of Fame induction ceremony. On stage with me are members of the greatest group of football legends to ever grace the gridiron at Raceland. This evening, we add 5 new members to that elite group. At this time, please rise. Gentlemen, remove your hats as we open with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, God, we thank you so much for this day of life that you've given us. God, we thank you for the abilities that not only the members of this elite group that are on stage with me, but the gentlemen that are sitting in the back of the auditorium right now, you have given them the ability to play the game that we love so much, and we thank you for that. God, as we come before you this evening, we realize that we have a game to play later on, but God, this is a time that we want to not only honor those that have forged the tradition set before us, but we also ask that you watch over the players tonight on the field and keep them safe from injury, and allow the game to be played the way that you want it to be played each and every night that they take the gridiron. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you. In 1990, H.G. Bissinger wrote a book that followed a high school football team from Odessa, Texas, as they made a run towards the Texas State Championship. I really believe that Friday Night Lights was written about Raceland and the tradition forged by these men on stage with me tonight. I am humbled to share the stage with these football Raceland legends. Let's start off with the class of 1966, number 12, Earl Smith. Earl was an all-NEKC member. Inducting Earl this evening is teammate Ron McLeod.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm not allowed to do any jokes. My wife's in the audience. She read my speech. So first of all, I'd like to say hello to all the school administration and the Ram families, and to all the legends. Let me start out by saying that a little bit of history. And back in the 60s, and I mean the 1960s, not the 1860s, guys, but it seems like better. That's over 58 years ago. The Rams were fortunate to salvage the program. We had some very terrible years, but the group from 64, 65, and 66 turned the program around. They won all games except for 3, and those each were lost by 1 point each. So we needed an extra point kicker, sounded to me like. We won back-to-back NEKC championships, and in my opinion, there's special items to have a successful program. Number one, you have to have a good coach and a good quarterback. Did I hear an amen from Mike Sammons and Logan Lundy? I should hear an amen from you guys. Of course, we were fortunate to have Coach Jim Conley and quarterback Earl Smith. Earl was a great quarterback. He was excellent at executing the game plan, making sure he took care of business. Earl Farrell Smith not only and as many is known as Dennis Smith. Earl was an outstanding athlete in football, basketball, and baseball. He was all district in basketball and all NEKC in football. He was also an outstanding student, as shown by his membership in the Beta Club. Now, Virgil, you may not know what Virgil and Raymond, Danny, tell them what the Beta Club is, would you? They don't know what it is. I'm sorry. Earl was not only successful in sports, but he was also successful in a business career as a dentist for 41 years in Ashland. But the best play Earl ever made in his life, I think, is catching Sandy Adams as his wife for 56 years. Earl and Sandy have two children and 2 grandchildren, and they live in Savannah, Georgia. So So it is fitting to induct our quarterback into the legends, joining other team members, Dan Burris, Kenny Lax, Virgil Howard, Joel Stewart, Raymond McCulley, and myself, along with the late Jim Conley and Mike Hewlett and Fred Bundy. In closing, let's say thanks to every person, every family, every Ram family, and anyone that's ever had anything to do with the Raceland Rams. So keep on pounding, guys. Earl Smith, come forward. I'll show you what he looked like 58 years ago. That's him, number 12. Hold that. And there he is with the team. That's our team. You notice we had black and white uniforms. That's all we could afford. That was our dress uniforms.
I'm not much of a speaker, so but I am proud and glad to be here for these guys back here behind us. We did have a heck of a football team, and we had speed. That's all we had. We had about 5, 6 guys who just run. So we didn't throw the ball much, thank God, because I wasn't much of a thrower. But we did have one hell of a football team, and I appreciate every one of them. I come back here, and I don't even recognize this place, and the campus is beautiful. John Stevens, Frank Melvin, whoever else, Burkhart, and all those guys did a hell of a job getting this together. And the only thing I'd say about Bub talking about, he was talking about the place kicker. Our place kicker was Frank Melvin. So the old superintendent's the one that lost the games for us. But I appreciate everything. My wife, my 2 kids, I don't see them, but they're supposed to be out there. Then I've got a bunch of nieces. I had 4 older sisters, and we got nieces running out the ears, and most of them are here. And I appreciate that. We're using that as a reunion. And I'd like to also mention 2 guys that meant more to me than anybody, Duke Preston and Sid Blevins. They've been with me for, I can't remember a day without Sid and Duke. So I wouldn't be here without those 2. So I want to appreciate it, and I want to thank everybody, and go out and beat the hell out of Fairview.
From the class of 1977, number 3, Frank Brown. Frank was all NEKC and honorable mention All-State in 1976, along with winning the offensive award that same year. He also won a sportsmanship award in 1977. Inducting Frank this evening is Coach Larry Stanley.
And at quarterback tonight, sophomore, number 3, Frank Brown. When we heard that on the intercom at the old Ram Field, I imagine a lot of folks said, what on earth are we starting that young rookie for? We got somebody with more experience, surely, to play than that 10th grader. But these folks that wanted to criticize didn't know the smartness of Coach Larry Heck. When he saw in Frank, he saw leadership. He saw someone that could take the reins of a very talented offense and make it into a contender. Frank's sophomore year was a 7-game win season. Pretty darn good for a 10th grader. Then his junior year. The junior year, we ended up NEKC champs. Frank was very instrumental in leading an offense that could grind it out or we could pass it. It made no difference, because our offense was multifaceted. I wrote down, some of the awards and whatever. I think already alluded to it with Mr. Melvin's introduction. But if you think back, and this is a good memory here. You know, Frank, as a junior, he played quarterback, he played safety, he was our punter, and our record that year was 9-4. We ended up being NEKC champs, district champs, and we were regional runner-ups. The thing that's kind of noticeable here to me is that he was a leader, and this is what we were looking for. We had some horses, we had several good linemen, and what Frank did on the field was to lead a very talented team, and he was the spark, he was the drive that pulled everything together. And this is, I guess we would have to say, you know, this goes along with the philosophy that Coach Heck had. We're going to find someone to lead this team, and Frank was the man. He was excellent in all areas of play, and it's my honor to say to him, you know, I'm glad to see you in this Hall of Fame.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Coach Stanley. I really appreciate it. I wrote down a couple things that I'd like to mention. First of all, thanks for the introduction, Coach Stanley. And I also want to express my appreciation, honor, and privilege to be a part of this association. Being chosen to represent Raceland Worthington High School as a nominee to Football Legends is something I feel like is an honor above all that I've done ever at Raceland. I feel it also appropriate. I want to thank my parents, Daryl and Sue Brown, whose vacations were spent going to local, regional, state ball tournaments. They also supplied equipment and resources for all of us, for not just myself, but for every kid that wanted to in the neighborhood to come and play. My mom was at every sporting event. Many of you can attest to that because she was the loudest, most obnoxious in the audience. Yeah, that was my mom. I also want to express to the coaches who personally dedicated hours to build character and instill persistence in all the players. Coach Stanley, Coach Pack, Coach Heck, Coach Heberlin, Coach Grizzle, Coach Ross. I want to thank especially Randy Vanderhoof, who I have the greatest respect and admiration. He not only kept the Raceland sports legacy alive, but he took it to another level. Randy, thank you for that. I had the honor to play with, watch, and hear stories about many of my predecessors. Paul Rose was my baseball coach. Buckshot Atkins, Donnie McBrayer, Tom Salmons, Leonard French were all renowned, synonymous with the Rambler football spirit. I was extremely lucky to grow up in Raceland, where my greatest fear was being picked on the opposite team of Mike Wilson. It seemed to be that myself and Tim Wilson always got that distinction. I watched Joe Nicely, Randy Heberlin, and coached baseball with Mike Hewlett. I had the privilege of playing on the same team with very fitting inaugural Hall of Famers like Mike Mills, Terry Howe, and also the produced Hall of Famers like Mike Imes, Darrell Barker, Jerry Barnes, all deserving of this tremendous example of Ram pride. So I want to tell you a story. I think I was in the 8th grade. The old gym, we used to have a weight room in the far corner. I went down there, and there was Randy Heberlin lifting weights. He was doing leg presses, and they had a free weight doing leg presses with. So after Randy left, I go in, I'm going to give it a shot. I can't move the bar. It's going nowhere. So I take some weights off. I tried again. I couldn't move the bar. I took more weights off. By that time, I was so embarrassed, I just left. I was done. But I never told Randy that story. I don't know if Randy's here now, but I didn't tell him that story because Randy would never embarrass you himself. But not being there, he embarrassed me. I played quarterback, free safety, punter, and from those positions, I got to watch some amazing athletes perform. I saw Mike Mills and Jerry Barnes pancake defenders. I watched Terry Howell run over tacklers. I watched Claude Campbell juke and outrun other defenders. I watched Tim Wilson make blocks and play linebacker and make tackles that you couldn't believe. And it was because he used to tackle Mike. So it was great to be a part of that. And I also got a story about Coach Stanley. When my sophomore year, when I was going to be quarterback, and as he said, there were other quarterbacks, there were other players that were probably better athletes at the time, but we were working on a new offense. We were running the option, and so I had to learn to ride the fullback in, watch the tackle. The tackle went for fullback, pull the ball, go down, see if the end was going to come in or is he going to go out, either pitch or turn up and run. And we were working on the pitching, and Coach said after about 3 or 4 pitches that didn't make it to the running back, he said, "You pitch like a sissy." I believe the term was sissy. Anyway, it was something like sissy. So that information got back to my dad. My dad was a tremendous baseball player, and so he heard that his son couldn't pitch. That's what he heard. His son couldn't pitch. So in the evenings when I went home, I had to go 20 times to the right, 20 times to the left, pitching the football. So I learned how to pitch. So by the time we started the season, I could pitch and they let me play. So, but it wasn't bad for me, but for my brother Darren, he was dead because he's running, sprinting. He had 40 sprints he had to go do to catch the ball. So I felt sorry for him. In closing, guys, I'm humbled. I am very appreciative of this honor. I want to thank the Hall of Fame committee. I also feel that it would be inspirational to have the inspiration of the football team have a Hall of Fame. And they've probably thought about this. I don't know how far it's gone, but you know, the band and the cheerleaders, they're inspiration to us. You know, they're out there practicing, they're out there cheering. They put as much work into it as many of us do. So I know that my feeling is that my cousin Deidre Huffman, I think, would be a great candidate for that inaugural Hall of Fame. I know that there's many others that would be, you know, great to go along with that. I also hope that Tim Wilson, Charles Huffman, Claude Campbell also get recognition in this, because I feel like that they're very deserving. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and it is quite an honor. Thank you.
From the class of 1981, number 30, Mitch Christian. Mitch was an all-NEKC member. He was all-area and Mr. Football his senior year. Inducting Mitch this evening is Rocky Crouch, and receiving the induction award is his wife, Deb.
Good evening. We're here this evening to honor 4 more Raceland football legends. I have been asked by the family to present Mitch Christian, my teammate and best friend. Mitch graduated in 1981. He was the son of Jack and Gail. He was the older brother to Brian, Gordy, and Jennifer. Mitch was very smart and very popular in school. Everyone liked him, from teachers to coaches to aides to students. Mitch fought cancer once and thought he beat it. But it came back aggressively, and we lost him last April. He left behind a wife, Deb, and 2 kids, JC and Ayla. He was an Ashland fireman and rose to the rank of battalion chief. He worked for 25 years before retiring in August of 2020. Mitch started on defense as a junior at cornerback and was a backup tailback. Our coach, Roger Snyder, was someone that didn't substitute or platoon much, so Mitch didn't get many carries as a junior. That year we had a very potent offense, spearheaded by our trapping run game, Jeff Adkins, Kenny Bostic, Chris Barker. But our main weapon that year was the passing attack of Mike Stevens to Darren Brown, Frankie's brother, and Mike Pickle Fannin. Now, Mike Fannin never played football before. He was a basketball and a track star, but he came out his senior year. And him and Darren were super fast, and Mike could throw it a long way. Every catch that Pickle made that year was a touchdown. That'll never be broken. Well, the next year as a senior, Mitch was described by Coach Snyder in the Ashland Daily Independent Football Preview as quick and entertaining, which he lived up to in a spectacular way. Like they said, he was all NEKC, all area, and Mr. Football that year. He led the area in scoring and had more than 1,200 yards from scrimmage. He also led our team in defensive takeaways, so he was a great player. At his visitation, while standing in line with a couple of my classmates, waiting to pay our last respects, they said they couldn't remember Mitch ever being angry at someone or anyone ever being angry at Mitch. And I agreed, because he could get along with anyone. He was my mom's favorite, that's for sure. Well, as I was going home that evening, I remembered one time in a game down in Maysville. It was a very close game. Mitch broke a run of 60 or 70 yards for a touchdown. Uh-oh, flag on the play. It got called back. Little brother Brian got called for blocking below the waist. Well, a couple of plays later, we called the same play. And again, another long touchdown. And again, there was a flag on the play. Brian didn't come back to the huddle. He went straight to the sideline. Later on the way home on the bus, I asked Brian, I said, how come you didn't come back to the huddle? He said, are you crazy? I'd much rather get my ass chewed by the coaches than get my ass whipped by Mitch. Well, we won that game and most of others, winning district, advancing to the playoffs. Back then, you had to win your district to make the playoffs. We lost in the first round to the eventual state champion, Bellevue. We did have a lead at halftime, but got beat in the second half. This ended Mitch's football career, but he'll always be remembered as quick and entertaining. Mitch was aware of this honor before he passed and was humbled to be so fondly thought of by all of us, his family, his teammates, his fireman brothers, and all his friends. I'm proud to say that Mitch Christian is a Raceland football legend. I'd also like to say, once a Ram, always a Ram. And I'd like to end with this. For all you people that lived your life here, this is home. Thank you.
I want to thank all of y'all, from my family, from all of us, for this honor for Mitch. I'm here to accept it on his behalf. I wish that I could have seen him play. I never got to. And that was one thing that really bothered me when I met him. I'll tell you a little story about that. My son was going to a daycare that Mitch's aunt was his teacher. And she told me this story. We'd been dating just a couple of weeks. And she said, "Oh, I heard that you were dating my nephew." And I said, "You're Mitch's aunt?" And she said, "Yeah." And she said, "You didn't know he was a football star?" And I said, "No." I said, "He didn't tell me that he was a football star." So when I saw him later that evening, I said, "You didn't tell me you were a football star." And Mitch, being Mitch, he said, "Oh, Deb," he said, "I wasn't a football star." But that was just Mitch. He was humble. He never bragged about himself. He was never one to brag about himself. But I didn't like football when I met Mitch. I didn't understand it, didn't know a thing about it. But I learned to love the game from him, and it became something that we always did together. He taught me everything I know about it. And for those of you that lost touch of him, I'll tell you a little bit about the way he was. He was loyal. He was disciplined. He was a great provider. He worked 2 jobs for 32 years. He was working 2 jobs when he became a firefighter. It's not only that he worked 2 jobs, but it's the way his schedule was that always impressed me and our kids. They grew up seeing this. He would go from 24-hour shift at the fire department to 12-hour shifts at King's Daughter's emergency room. That's a very high-stress job and physically demanding. He would work there for 2 days on the 12-hour shifts, and then he'd go right back to the fire department, 24-hour shift again, before he'd get a day off. So that'd be 72 hours in 4 days, unless he got a call out at the fire station, and then it'd be 96 hours in 5 days. Then back to King's Daughters for 12 or 24 more hours to finish out his week. The next week might be the same, so he might be working for 2 weeks like this, unless he had a short week with no call-outs. But if he worked with his call-out, he'd be working a 116-hour shift, and he might do that 2 weeks in a row. He never did rest well at the fire station. No one did. The tones are waking them up, and the trucks have to be rolling out at a moment's notice. They'd have 3 minutes to get to where their call was. And this is how he worked. He did that for 25 years. He was a devoted husband. I could have never found a better man. I always said he was 1 in a million. And I can speak for our children. They always had him on a pedestal as the world's greatest dad. He was a phenomenal papa. He doted on his grandchildren. Everyone liked Mitch. They thought of him as a great guy. He was a great guy, but he was always my hero.
from the class of 1994, number 50, Brian Schaefer. Brian was a two-time All-Area and All-NEKC selection. Inducting Brian this evening is Coach Dan Mercer.
I'm a little reluctant to have my back to this crew right here. I just so happened to play against a few of these old guys back here in the late 60s, and Kenny still tells me how we cheated down there at McHale when we I'm sure glad we cheated, though. But what a group of guys this was. And my high school football coach, Tom Sims, always prepared us very well for Raceland. He graduated here, and we knew coming in up here that we had our hands full, and it hasn't changed a bit since those days. These young men out here carry that old flag very well, and I'm just awfully proud of everyone here. You know, Raceland from that time has evolved into what I want to say a small football powerhouse here in Kentucky. When I come here in 1991, why, you know, we were kind of maybe mediocre, and Bill Tom Ross told me, he said, Coach, he said, I believe this is the group that can take us to that mountain. Well, it was a good group. Philip Kern, Jamie Newman, and that bunch. Randy, you remember those guys, and Mike Daniels, and just a real fine group of young men, but we still just weren't there. But now this group here has an opportunity, and the moon is the limit, guys. The moon's the limit. But during 1991, that season, I come up here from that place down the road that won't even drive through Raceland anymore. They're afraid to. But anyway, there was a big old boy there. He was a sophomore. And I'm just going to be real honest with you. He knows I'm honest. He was a little lazy. And I literally would tell Kearns and Newman and those guys, beat him so he'll quit. But Brian evolved into a real nice player for us. He stepped up, I think, his sophomore year when Mike Daniels broke his ankle or broke his leg at Lawrence County. And Brian filled in there at that defensive end for the rest of the season. And then, of course, his junior and senior year, why, you know, he had two excellent years for us and was always very reliable. And it was just a lot of fun to coach Brian. I've become rather acquainted even more so with Brian over the last couple of years through his son playing baseball and so on. And he and I talk a lot of football, and he still remembers that gap on over backside stuff that, nah, you guys don't do that anymore. We weren't smart enough to coach anything like you guys do. But Brian was always that type of guy. And I've got to tell this too on him. Yeah, I'm going to tell it. He had a little hiccup there between his junior and senior year there, and he didn't get a practice football for about the first 2 weeks of camp, I think. We won't go into that. But he said, Coach, of course, I was the principal then. He said, Coach, he said, now, is there any way we can work around this? I said, no, we've got to stand fast. So, but there was not a time that he was not available that he was out there watching practice and keeping up with practice. And when we called the defensive ends and the linebackers, he would go with them. When we called the offensive line, he would go with them. And he was a good student of the game. Now, if the FBI were looking for him tonight, they would find him down there in that old familiar corner that he stands, down there toward the baseball field on the visitor side. He's been there for years, and he'll be there again tonight. But it was an honor and a pleasure to coach Brian. And I got to mention one of his old teammates here, come from Cincinnati, and old Cliff Adkins and so forth. And Cliff is here tonight, and it's just a real good time to see Cliff. And Thomas Tolliver was the honorest kid that ever played here. I'll say that. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be involved with this program tonight. And yes, this is home. Brian, come forward.
smart when you can. Thanks, Jeff. You better. Appreciate it. Well, I didn't write anything down, so I figured that wouldn't be me. It's a real honor to be up here. I play with a lot of good teammates, and sticking with Cliff, this is more for you guys right here. These guys that you're with right now, these ain't just your teammates on Friday nights. You're building relationships that's going to last you for life. Cliff's battling cancer. He's been battling it for a while. And it was a lot for him to come down here tonight from the Cincinnati area. That's what Raceland football is. That's the relationships that you're making. Later on in life, you're going to have some of these people that you're sitting next to, your locker into, next to. You get jammed up in life, they're going to be there for you. Your coaches, they're going to be there for you. Don't forget about them. Whenever you need something, don't forget about your old coaches. I come to some of these guys, Coach Hoof is itching to get all over me. Anytime I need him, he's going to get on me, even as old as I am. Now, they ain't going to tell you what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what you need to hear. Don't forget about your coaches. Don't forget about your teammates through life. It's very important. I play with a lot of good football players. And yeah, I said the exact same thing that a lot of you all are saying. When you heard that I was getting inducted, we have scraped the bottom of the barrel. We've ran out of players. But I've got some guys that came to see me. I think I had to pay my kids to come. They're sitting back here in the back. Easton didn't want to come. Yeah, I think I got to go get blizzards or something after this. That was the payment. Had a lot of fun. You know, when you talk about Raceland football, a lot of people want to describe it, and they use the same things when they describe it. Talk about the community, what the community means to the football team, what the football team means to the community. But if you think that we're just about coming and playing football games on Friday night, then you're really not paying attention to what's going on down here. We're in the business of helping young kids become great young men. And we do that with all the coaches that we've had over the years that want to give up their time that they could be spending elsewhere with their family, hunting, fishing, their extra time. They spend it down here. And I don't think that we have any of this just on players alone. If we don't have the great men that it took to build this, we don't have anything. It's always has been and always will be an honor to be a Raceland Ram. And I can remember, I was thinking this week, what is my first football memory? My first football memory of going to a football practice, I think I was in the 3rd grade. They throw you a bunch of pads. I've never had them on before. Scott Truesdale and Mark Huffman was my coach. And we practiced in the back of Worthington over in that sand pit. And I showed up. Mom brought me. And I showed up, and Mark comes over to me, and I had this pad. I didn't know where it went. And he looked at me, and I had thigh pads where my knee pads went, and I was holding all this stuff, and he says, come here. He took me back behind the dumpster, got my pants off, put all the pads where they go, buttoned me up. But that was my first football memory, and it's been great ever since then. I wish you all the best. Go at it 100%, because it's coming to an end quick and fast for you seniors. Don't take a day off. Don't take a play off. Like I said, anytime you need something, your coaches, your teammates will be there. Thank you.
From the class of 2006, number 11, Thomas Tolliver. Thomas was a two-time All-Area and All-NEKC selection, honorable mention All-State his senior year, with 136 career receptions for 2,112 yards and 29 touchdowns. Inducting Thomas this evening is Coach Randy Vanderhoof.
What an incredible day this is for our Raceland Worthington community to celebrate Raceland football. I don't know if you guys really know what you're part of. You might one of these days. What you guys are doing now is built on the shoulders of players and teams that's been playing here since 1926. And we're all rooting for you guys, and we hope this is the year that you bring home the big trophy. Just keep getting better every single day. You know, this is family here. This is a special place, and I know you may fire me, Bill. That's fine, no big deal. But a lot of you know this name. Coach Larry Heck was here for a long time. His wife is here today. And if you don't care, would you please stand so we can honor you, Mrs. Heck. Appreciate you. Coach's wife used to say this was their Camelot years, and it was our Camelot years too, if you kind of remember back in those days. And I remember appreciate Frank Brown. I was a freshman when he was a senior, and some of you seniors can learn a lot from Frank. Frank was a great leader. He was always good to all of us young guys that was on the team, and I just wish you guys could have seen what type of leader that he was each and every single day. The player that here with today is, like he says, Thomas Tolliver. And listen to those stats. We just told Thomas, Bill, we should have got him the ball more. Thomas was an incredible athlete. Thomas is already in our basketball Hall of Fame. We don't have a baseball Hall of Fame. He would be in that. Some of you have heard some of those stories on the baseball diamond. They're all true because he was a phenomenal player, went on and played 4 years at Transy, set records there, all conference, did all kinds of tremendous things there. But the biggest thing about Thomas was, not only as a football player, guys, he was a student athlete first. When Thomas came in the building every day, he was a student. Thomas was prepared for class. Thomas took pride in being a student here first and being an athlete second, and he was a tremendous athlete. On the football field, you got a lot of guys that can put up numbers against teams that sometimes are not very good. But Thomas is one of those guys. He put them up against teams that could play, and when the game was on the line, you knew Thomas was going to make the play for you, whether it was offense, defense, special teams, whatever it was. His quarterback, Scott Grizzle, was a pretty good player here too. And Scott always says, Thomas said, if you'd been 6'2", you'd have been Division I, and no doubt about it. He's that type of incredible athlete. Thomas played here. He said we listed him at 135 pounds in the program, and he said that was stretching it in his weight back in those days. Some of the plays that Thomas made, we could tell you about them, but some of you have to go back and watch film. Yeah, we had film back in the day, players, not huddle. It's just a phenomenal, the type of plays that Thomas Tolliver made for us. You know, some players are called electric. Thomas's nickname was TNT because he was dynamite. It made no difference. The thing that made him dynamite, like he prepared as a student every day, that's the way he prepared to play football or any sport here. Was fortunate to be his head coach at the time. Every single day in practice, it's not a cliche, every single day in practice, Thomas never took a rep off. Made no type, if it was noose drill, if it was pat and go drill, Thomas Tolliver was giving his best effort every single day to be the best player that he could be to help make our team the best that it could be. And that showed on Friday nights. If you needed to play to win a game, Thomas was the guy to do that. Out here against Fairview at that time was a really good team, had a really good program, made a phenomenal catch down here, flipped 92 if I'm not mistaken, right, Thomas? He hauls it in, and our principal now, Tom Collins, is going crazy. You can see that on film too. But unbelievable. We're down at Paris, Kentucky, game on the line, comes up with a big play to pull us out that night. For some reason, the head coach had a bad night, but Thomas made us look good with the victory that night. That was just Thomas. He was just dynamite. And it's great to see how he's turned out, such a fine young man, living in Lexington, doing really well for himself, training athletes, doing a tremendous job. I really don't know what else to say, but Thomas, I love you, man, from the bottom of my heart. TNT, Thomas Toller.
Yeah, I don't have any words of wisdom or enlightenment, but I do have people I want to acknowledge and thank. First off, I want to wish my parents a happy 45th anniversary today. This is the only gift I got y'all. My apologies for that. Secondly, I want to congratulate all the other recipients here today, everybody that's been inducted. I want to thank my parents, Donnie and Jenny, for putting up with 4 boys all these years. I want to thank my brothers Andy, Jared, PR, the McCauley family, for the Sandlot football games on Park Street and McLeod Drive. Tyler Farley, you know all about that, and always looking out for me growing up. I want to thank everyone that is in attendance, but most importantly, the ones that would be here without hesitation but can't be with us. Mitch, as mentioned before, Greg Grizzle, Ron Ross, Dave Schwab, Larry Massey, Mark Cooper, Scott Woods, among many others. Raceland family runs deep. I wouldn't be up here if it wasn't for Coach Hoof, Coach Rocky. My family was fortunate enough to have him as a mentor for all these years as a baseball, football, and overall life coach. And from my family, us Solvers, I want to thank you, Coach. Also got to give a shout out to all the quarterbacks that throw the ball to the receivers, even though they get enough credit as is. Included Aaron Petrie, Scott Grizzle, Tyler Boyles, Tyler Farley. That's really all I got to say tonight. Rams by 90, beat Fairview and take state.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the 2023 Raceland Football Legends Hall of Fame induction ceremony. There are refreshments being served in the Commons area. We'd like to thank everyone for coming. And at this time, please give our legends another big Rams round of applause.